Greetings everyone, welcome to the channel if you're new, welcome back if you aren't. I'm EDJ, and we are continuing with Caesar's Civil War. Last time, he has taken Spain, completely owning the war right now. Caesar is just unstoppable. The Western Front is basically his, so now I guess we're moving eastward, you know, to finally confront with Pompey. So we're going to be covering the battles of Utica, and you know what, forget it. The point is, we're covering these two battles. So yeah, I'm just really excited. I'm trying to pump through this because I'm just too invested. It's like when you're watching a good show and you just want to binge it. It's kind of what I'm doing right now. So we'll see how far I get. But for now, let's just get to it, guys. I just can't wait anymore. If you want to watch the original video without my commentary, without me pausing to talk, the link is always down in the description down below. And with that said, let's get to it. Let's watch these battles from Caesar's Civil War.
Our series on the Great Roman Civil War started out with Gaius Julius Caesar taking over Italy and then defeating Pompey's legions in Hispania. Caesar was now planning to attack the center of the Senate faction in Greece, but this was not the only region under Pompey's control. As the province of Africa was crucial for feeding Rome, Caesar's lieutenant Curio attacked its governor Varus, leading to the battles of Utica and Bagradas. This video is sponsored by While Caesar was on his way to confront Pompey's legions in Spain.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned, because I said at the end of last video, after he took Spain, the next most important place to take would be Africa, mainly due to its grain, right? So that's that's logically what I thought would be the next thing. So I guess this is where it's done.
His legates were fighting the civil war in the Mediterranean and African theatres. Before Caesar had even reached Spain, Valerius had taken Sardinia with the 16th Legion, and Curio had claimed Sicily with the 15th and 17th. Together, around the end of April to early May, they combined their forces in Sicily, along with the 20th Legion from Italy, making a total of 4 legions and about 1,500 cavalry, and began preparing to invade North Africa. Alongside Sardinia and Sicily, North Africa, specifically modern Tunis, was one of the biggest suppliers of grain feeding the Roman Republic at the time. Taking North Africa would, therefore, give Caesar control of all of the major grain centres, ensuring that he could supply his armies throughout the war, and robbing Pompey of any opportunity to starve him out of Italy. Command of this invasion was assigned to Curio, who was a skilled politician, but lacked military command experience. He earned this opportunity by being instrumental for Caesar in the Senate. To compensate for his lack of experience, he was assigned a body of talented legates, including Regulus, a legate who had served with Caesar in Gaul and fought with distinction at Alesia. The legions Curio commanded were largely raw, all having been raised just a few months earlier while Caesar was pushing south through Italy. However, Caesar knew that Pompey's best troops were in Spain and the east, and so any Pompeian troops in Africa would be equally raw. It was thought that, with 4 legions, Curio had enough men and talented advisors to invade successfully. However, Curio did not want to invade Africa without first hearing news from Spain, just in case his men would be needed to support Caesar, so for now he remained in Sicily. Africa was under the control of the Pompeian Publius Attius Varus. Varus had previously been propraetor of the province and was dismayed to find it woefully unprepared for war, with only 1 legion present in Hadrumetum. He immediately took control and strengthened the province, raising another 2 legions and encamping them outside Utica. Furthermore, he requested the aid of the nearby client king, Juba of Numidia. Juba was an old ally of Pompey, who owed his kingship to Pompey's earlier campaign and had a personal hatred of Caesar and Curio, as both had insulted him in the past. he readily agreed to side with the Pompeians and would prove to be a crucial ally for Varus. It wasn't until August, after receiving word of Caesar's victory in Spain, that Curio began his crossing into Africa. Curio did not think much of his opponents, disdaining both Varus and Juba, and so instead of bringing his full force across, he only brought 2 legions, likely the 15th and 16th, and 500 cavalry, along with a sizable navy. Landing at Anquilaria, between Utica and Hadrumetum, Curio decided to engage the larger force first, so began his march to Utica, reaching the river Bagradas 2 days later. Here he left Regulus in charge of the legions, while he took the cavalry ahead to scout the Castro Cornelia, an old Roman fort on a small elevated peninsula that was left over from the Punic Wars. This camp was just 5 kilometers from Utica, and from the higher ground, Curio reconnoitred Varus's camp. The Pompeian camp was in a strong position, using the walls of Utica as part of its defences on one side, and the outdoor amphitheatre of Utica blocking another.
Man, I guess we'll find out, but yeah, I'm a little bit weary of Curio. Like, obviously he doesn't have much experience. He had green, raw recruits. Sure, he had Regulus, but now he's left him behind, and he didn't even bring all his legions, which were already raw. He only brought, like, what, 2? So it almost comes across as underestimating the opponent, so yeah, I'm not sure if he's going to do well. So far I'm a bit weary, but we'll see what Curio's made of, right?
Making any approach to the camp narrow and difficult. When observing the town, Curio saw a large number of supplies being brought into the city on the roads from the local populace seeking refuge. Looking to hamper Varus's supplies and take some for himself, Curio sent his cavalry to attack them. Varus was quick to react though, and sent his own force of 600 Numidian horsemen and 400 Numidian infantry to defend. The Numidian cavalry, which had raced ahead of the infantry, clashed with the Roman horse first, but the Numidians were lightly armed and best accustomed to skirmishing rather than melee fighting. Curio's men were able to inflict significant casualties in the fight, forcing the Numidian cavalry to flee back to the town and camp, quickly followed by the infantry. Traders and their goods were seized by Curio and taken back to the Castro Cornelia, which he planned to use as his main base for the invasion. Meanwhile, Curio's navy had moved into position outside the port of Utica, which harboured possibly as many as 200 merchant ships, with no military ships for protection. Curio sent a proclamation declaring that any merchant ship that did not transfer their supplies to the Castro Cornelia would be treated as an enemy and boarded by his navy. With no naval protection, the merchants saw little choice and sailed their goods to the Castro Cornelia, providing the Caesarians with a further abundance of supplies. Curio's campaign was off to a good start, leaving a small force.
Yeah, Curio seems to be doing really good. Like I said, I was weary because I don't know what he's made of. I don't know anything about him. Good start. I guess we'll see if he continues it.
Castro Cornelia to guard the supplies, he returned to his troops at the Bagradas with news of his achievements, where they recognized him as Imperator. Bolstered by this success, the next day he moved his army to go on the offensive, aiming to encamp just outside the town of Utica, displaying a similar kind of aggression to Caesar. While this camp was being constructed, Curio received word from the pickets that a large Numidian force was approaching. Curio had failed to scout the area properly and was surprised by this sudden new force. Quickly, he ordered his men to abandon the construction of the camp and form battle lines, while he sent his cavalry to engage the Numidians in a delaying action. The Numidians did not march in a tight formation, and so were vulnerable to cavalry charges. As soon as Curio's cavalry made contact, the Numidian cavalry fled to Utica, followed swiftly by the infantry. The Roman cavalry harassed the Numidian infantry, inflicting some casualties, but the bulk of the Numidian force successfully made it into
Okay,
the camp.
Curio kind of slipped up there for a second. He didn't fully scout out. He was caught off guard, but you know, that's fine. Like I said, he doesn't seem to have much experience. But dang, is he doing well right now. And that's mainly because of just, I guess, the better formation of the Romans compared to the Numidians. So, but still, man. I'm wondering how he's going to do against the main Roman legions, though. Like, he's doing well against the Numidians, and, you know, he has confronted some of the Pompeians, but I guess we'll see if he has a pitched battle or not, or the siege, how he'll do. But so far, so good.
Caesar describes the Numidians as having been routed, but it seems more likely that this was a tactical withdrawal. The Numidians likely had not been seeking an engagement in the first place, and prioritized combining with Varus's forces rather than being drawn into a pitched battle.
I see.
Though Curio had, so far, been largely successful, the following day, 2 of his centurions and 22 of their men defected to Varus.
What?
They told Varus that Curio's army did not have faith in him, and that Varus would be able to win them over to his side. Their motivation for doing this is not known. Curio had performed well so far, aside from poor scouting, and had apparently been hailed as Imperator, so it is unlikely that Curio's men lacked confidence in him as is portrayed. The more likely reason is that Curio's men were still effectively raw recruits. They had not fought a pitched battle before, and some of the officers in Varus's army had trained and led Curio's men at Corfinium. It is likely, therefore, that the men were motivated more out of either fear or an unwillingness to fight former comrades than dissatisfaction with Curio.
Oh, that makes sense, because I was confused for a second. I'm like, Curio's doing a pretty good job. Why would they want to leave? And also being claimed Imperator, but that makes sense. Fear and not wanting to kill your old buddies. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Okay. Though I don't know how many left Curio. He's gonna have to win a battle now. he needs to salvage this to you know, not encourage any more desertment, right?
Nevertheless, the next day, Varus marched his force out of the camp, Curio following suit. An officer in Varus's army, Sextus Varus, who had been one of the officers at Corfinium, appealed to Curio's men. He reminded them that they had previously sworn oaths to Pompey, Ahenobarbus, and to himself, and that they should not fight the men they trained with and had been prepared to fight alongside. Though Curio's army showed little reaction, Varus withdrew his force back into camp, confident that, given time, this appeal would strike a chord with Curio's men. Though the message had been received in silence at first, when Curio's legions were back in camp, the men began to talk amongst themselves. Oaths held a strong religious connotation, and they were not broken easily. The more the men talked, the more they began to fear that they had made a mistake by switching their allegiance from Pompey to Caesar. Rumour likely exaggerated the number of men who were of this mindset, though some certainly were, and Curio was soon worried that his whole army was on the brink of mutiny.
Okay, they're using psychological war. They're trying to win this without even having to fight. Like, hey, we know each other, we're cool. Okay, I kind of like that. That's a different aspect of warfare, right? I guess psychological warfare is the appropriate term, but you know, dang, Curio. Yeah, if this is a Curio's undoing, that's hilarious. But we're gonna have to see Curio. You need to instill more confidence, bro. You've been doing pretty good, but now you need to do even better. I'm rooting for you, bro. We're on the Caesarian side so far. We're rooting for you, Curio. Come on, bro.
Gathered his officers and sought advice for how to address the situation. The officers suggested 2 options. Firstly, that they attack the Pompeian camp immediately, thinking that keeping the men busy would be best, rather than allowing any rumours to circulate. Or secondly, to withdraw back to Cornelia Castra and try to calm the men there.
Oh, dang. I don't know what he does. Like I said, I don't know anything about this, so I guess being in the dark gives me an opportunity to think. That's a tough call. I mean, sure, they can go back to the camp for sure and try to calm the men there, but then again, on the way there'll be more opportunities for the men to think, right? To, like, nurse doubts, and once they're there, you know, like, what, just give them a speech? Or you're gonna have to wait there and then give them more time? I don't know, I'm of the opinion that probably keeping them busy is the better idea, but then again, they haven't fought in a pitched battle. Curio hasn't led a big battle like this, so if he just charges in there while they still have these stats, there's a chance things can go. Man, that's a tough call. I don't know what I would do, man. I mean, I guess I'm leaning more to the side of keep the men busy, go fight and win battles and show them, you know, what you're made of, but at the same time, they're still fighting their old former comrades, and I think I might have leaned more into the attack. Then again, like I said, I'm not a military man by any means. I probably really suck, and who knows, maybe that decision that I would make would be disastrous. Let's see what Curio does.
Curio was not convinced of either option. He saw an all-out attack on the camp as foolhardy, and a retreat as a show of cowardice. Furthermore, he believed the number of men who were genuinely feeling disloyal had been overplayed. As such, he gathered the soldiers and addressed them.
The future of your...
He gave a rousing speech, pointing out that Ahenobarbus had surrendered at Corfinium, voiding any oaths the men had made to him, and that their oath to Caesar now took precedent. He espoused the achievements of Caesar in Spain, saying that they were on the winning side, so why join the losing one? Finally, he listed his own achievements in Africa so far, and that they had hailed him as Imperator.
True.
The men were moved by the speech, and acclaimed Curio, putting to rest any ideas of mutiny. It's
Genius!
possible that not a lot of men felt that way in the first place.
Genius. Okay, Curio, you have won me over. Man, my full-hearted plan of attacking... Dang it, this is why I'm not a military man. Curio, you're doing great. You have a great career ahead of you. Assuming he doesn't die soon. But, dang, man. Great option. Here I was thinking of these... This is why I'm not going to be a great military man, because Caesar, when he's presented two options, always thinks of a third one that's not previously mentioned. Curio just did the same thing. Oh my goodness. Thinking outside the box. That's what makes one great. Well, it helps. But, you know... Dang. Curio, you put me to shame. Imperator. I hail you as Imperator too. You put me to shame. Dang, great job, Curio. Great job.
But either way, Curio was continuing to show himself as a man with leadership potential. With a simple speech, he had regained full control of the army without needing to resort to any harsh discipline or excessive time wasting. Determined to draw Varus into a pitched battle, Curio marched his men out of camp the following day. Varus followed suit, the two armies facing off with each other across a large ditch. The ditch was not particularly deep, only around 2.5 meters, but its sides were steep and would present a disadvantage to any trying to scramble up. Varus made the first move, sending his Numidian cavalry from the left flank, supported by light infantry, to flank Curio's force. Curio countered by sending two cohorts of the 16th, along with all his cavalry. The Numidian cavalry charged the Roman legionnaires, but lightly armed, they were easily repulsed and routed. The light infantry were left exposed, and, surrounded by Curio's heavy infantry and cavalry, were slaughtered. Rebelis urged Curio to capitalize on this success and charge Varus's force to instigate a mass rout.
Dang, he really tried going for the flank right there, but got completely countered. But dang, Curio, dude, does he even need wait, what's his name again? Wait.
On this cavalry were slaughtered. Rebelis urged.
Rebelis, okay, I was saying Regulus. Rebelis. Okay, does he even need him? Curio seems to have great potential on his own. Like, I'm joking, obviously. It's good Rebelus is there. But, man, yeah, I guess just attack. Why not? The Numidians are basically kind of useless at this point. No offense, but, like, they just seem completely useless. You might as well just slaughter them and just get to the real meat of the army and just win. Then again, that might be a bit foolhardy of me to think that. Let's see what the great Curio would
Curio
say.
to capitalize on this success and charge Varus's force to instigate a mass rout. Curio heeded the advice and led his men across the ditch, but even as they were scaling the other side, Varus's force, seeing that Curio now had a cavalry advantage and could easily outflank them, had begun to flee the battlefield. They did not retreat in good order, and Varus himself was wounded and almost killed in the retreat. As his army tried to push through the narrow pass to their camp, they became caught in a bottleneck, and many were slain by Curio's pursuing force.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm happy that I said I would just attack. Okay, I guess I'm not as bad as I thought, because Curio also agreed there, but... Oh man, dude. Varus, you're just a walking L, bro. Like, man, I thought Varus had more experience than Curio, but Curio seems like he's just completely dominating this dude. Man.
Indeed, more of Varus's men died here than in the battle. However, when Varus's men had made the safety of the camp, Curio did not push any further, not having the equipment needed to siege the camp. Caesar gives Curio's casualties as being just one man. This is surely not accurate, but it is likely that his casualties were minimal, while Varus had lost almost 600 dead and 1,000 wounded.
Yeah, we can tell Caesar's accounts probably aren't accurate, at least in regards to how many people die or not. That's funny. Yeah, he only lost like one dude, it's fine. Oh, Caesar. I gotta read his book. Maybe after this series is done, I just need to read it.
This battle might seem unbelievable in how quickly Varus's men broke, but there were a few points to consider. Firstly, Varus misused his Numidian cavalry. The Numidians were light cavalry and skilled skirmishers, but due to their light arms and armor, were not equipped for melee fighting against heavy cavalry and infantry. Secondly, Varus's whole army had only recently been levied, less than 6 months ago. Likely, very few of his men had any military experience, which explains why they were so quick to rout. Compare, for instance, the actions of Caesar's legions in Spain, who, when cut off from the army and in risk of being surrounded, retreated in order to high ground and formed a defensive square. That is the difference between veterans and raw recruits. Under the cover of darkness, Varus moved what was left of his force into the city of Utica, leaving just a small detachment of men, trumpeters and tents in the camp to give the illusion it was still garrisoned. Curio was quick to discover the ploy and began the creation of earthworks around Utica to besiege the city. Initially, the citizens of Utica appealed to Varus to surrender, not wanting to go through the grueling experience of a siege. However, a messenger arrived in Utica with information that Juba, king of Numidia, was on his way and nearby to support Varus. It is not known how large Juba's army was, aside from 60 elephants, but given that this was the royal army, it surely numbered in the tens of thousands. With these reinforcements on the way, Varus soothed the citizens' concerns, confident that he would be able to defeat Curio. Curio soon discovered the same information. Initially, he did not believe the reports, confident that he was on the brink of victory, and continued the siege. More reports came in, however, verifying the information, and saying that Juba was now just 36 miles away. Upon learning this, Curio abandoned his plans of besieging Utica, withdrawing to the Castro Cornelia instead. He began further fortifying the fort, and sent word to Sicily to send over the 2 legions and all the cavalry left in Sicily. This was a good plan. The Castro Cornelia could be easily defended, and with access to the sea, Curio could maintain a supply line and safely await reinforcement.
I hate these ads, but okay, smart. Okay, he almost faltered there. He was a bit too overconfident, but luckily good information prevailed. He verified the reports and he acted accordingly, going back, pulling away from the main force that was approaching, now bringing the rest of his soldiers while fortifying a strong defensive position, which I'm assuming that Varys and the king are gonna go and try to confront. They're gonna go to Curio, and Curio will be not only in a strong defensive position, but he will also receive the reinforcements that are coming. Okay. Okay, Curio, man, what a Chad. I'm impressed. This dude I did not know who existed. Is he about to be the Davu of this series? Remember in the Napoleon series? I was like, who's this Davu guy? And then I became like his biggest fan after the Battle of Jena. Am I about to be like Curio's biggest fan? Is the rest of the series gonna be me like Curio? We'll see, but I'm very impressed by this man.
Juba was a cunning opponent though. He sent men from Utica under the guise of deserters to Curio, saying that Juba had to redirect his force to suppress a rebellion, and that the Numidian force was only a small force commanded by his lieutenant Sabura. Curio, still riding the wave of his previous victories and keen to prove himself, believed these reports and sought to crush the Numidians in a pitched battle. Abandoning his defensive position around 3 AM, he marched his force to the Bagradas to confront them, leaving 5 cohorts in the Castro Cornelia.
Okay, Curio. You faltered with the overconfidence there at the beginning. I praised you. Then again, this isn't done. Who knows? Maybe Curio might actually win, and I might change my tune. Just right now, that doesn't sound good. But who knows? Maybe Curio could actually win. If he does, he really will be the Davu of this series. But I don't want to jump too far. I don't want to be like, you fool, but I also don't want to praise him too hard. I need to see how this plays out. But that doesn't sound good.
Having learnt his lesson previously, Curio sent his cavalry ahead of his legions as a scouting party, and they quickly discovered Sabura's own advanced units. Curio's cavalry fell upon the Numidians, who, taken by surprise and with no encampment, suffered heavy casualties before retreating back to Sabura's main force. However, instead of staying to hold the area or scouting further ahead, Curio's cavalry headed back to Curio's main force with a few prisoners to tell him of their success. Curio had already marched 10 kilometers from the Castro Cornelia when his cavalry returned. He questioned the prisoners as to who their commander was, and they replied that Sabura was, confirming in Curio's mind that he was only facing a small portion of the Numidian army. Determined, Curio pushed his men to march on. In the meantime, however, Sabura had sent word to Juba about the night battle, and in response, Juba had sent ahead 2,000 Spanish and Gallic cavalry, part of his personal guard, and his best infantry to bolster Sabura's army, while Juba continued his advance with the main force. Sabura kept withdrawing his force, feigning retreats and pulling the Romans after him. Curio was being lured into a trap. Curio's army had now marched almost 28 kilometers since breaking camp, and his men were exhausted from the early start. They now found themselves in a large, flat, open plain. This was what Sabura had been waiting for. He lined up his infantry for battle, but kept them at a fair distance from the Roman force, enough to be a threat, but far away enough to not be caught by the Romans, and left most of the fighting to his cavalry.
I'm like full of suspense right now. Curio's being led to a trap, but then again, we've seen so far that even these raw recruits have been kind of massacring the Numidians, so then again, it's just that Roman discipline. Will that save them? We've seen people outnumbered before, but thanks to good Roman discipline, they've pulled out of odds of being outnumbered. So I'm not gonna write Curio off yet. Again, the only fault is that these recruits are a little raw, but you know what? Still, Roman discipline, like, man, like, we'll see. If he wins, he is officially the Davu of this series to me. If you win, Curio, I'm gonna praise you like Davu. Maybe not as excessively, but I will think of you like the Davu of this series.
Engagements had already depleted Curio's cavalry, and still more had paused to rest and water their horses, leaving Curio with just 200 horsemen when the forces engaged, and the Numidians used this to their advantage. Their heavier Gallic and Spanish cavalry could charge the Roman flanks and rear, while the lighter Numidian cavalry skirmished and harassed them. Curio tried to use his cavalry to chase away the enemy charges, but they were too tired to pursue, and Sabura's men would simply withdraw and then strike in another place. When the Numidians could draw a cohort into breaking ranks and charging, the cohort would find itself utterly surrounded by horsemen and cut down. Fighting in such a manner and on such open and flat terrain was ideal for the Numidians. By this point, the whole of Curio's army was surrounded by Sabura's force, and more of Juba's men were trickling in, providing a constant supply of fresh reinforcements against the exhausted Romans. Desperately, Curio ordered some of his men to take the legion's standards and to fight their way out of the encirclement to some nearby hills. The Numidians allowed them to break through the ring at first, but soon quickly surrounded them and cut them down to a man. The battle was a disaster. Curio's men had lost all hope. Some men broke down and cried to the gods or their mothers, others simply abandoned their weapons and waited to die. Gnaeus Domitius, the prefect of horse, gathered what little cavalry was left around Curio and urged him to try and save himself and retreat to the Castra Cornelia. Curio replied that he would never be able to face Caesar after such a disaster. He died fighting alongside his men. Both the 15th and 16th legions were utterly destroyed, around 11,000 men. The Roman...
Oh, Curio, your overconfidence and just got the better of you, man. You did really good until you didn't. But man, yeah, I guess I was right in thinking that didn't look good. Dang, man, what a disaster. Oh, Curio. Rip. Dang.
Cavalry that had been watering their horses had watched the destruction from a distance and raced back to the Cornelia Castra to inform the 5 cohorts and the caestor left in charge, Marcius Rufus, of the disaster. He tried to organize an evacuation by sea back to Sicily of the men left, but panic had already taken over as rumors spread that Varus might be closing in for the kill. Men pushed past one another to scramble onto the ships, and some became so overburdened that they sank. The captains of the ships grew equally as nervous, and in the end, only a few high-ranking officers, including Regulus and Rufus, made it onto the ships before the captains set sail. The men that were left in the Castra Cornelia sent centurions to Varus and surrendered. The African campaign had been an unmitigated disaster. Africa would remain in Pompeian hands. Caesar, who was on his way east from Spain to face Pompey in Greece, would have to postpone any invasion of Africa for the time being. Our series on Caesar's civil war will continue.
Wow, so that's the first big W for Pompey, right? But it wasn't even the Pompeian legions, it was the Client King that really carried. So, yeah, Pompey, granted, they were raw recruits there too, but, you know, it wasn't really them who won that, it was really more the Client King, so still an overall Pompey victory, but, you know, that was mainly due to his ally. But yeah, Caesar, yeah, I guess that's the first big blow to Caesar so far, so, dang, man, Curio, dude, you had the potential, bro. You made some good calls and good judgments until that final fatal mistake, man. I was getting ready to praise you, man. I was getting ready to make you the Davu, but you're not, my friend. I'm sorry. You failed. But he was still pretty cool. It was still really interesting to learn about it. That was like a weird side adventure. But I guess we're going back to Caesar next time.
Continue in the near future, so make sure you are subscribed to our channel and have pressed the bell button.
And I will be getting to that. That was another great episode, and I'm gonna keep going on because I'm trying to binge through all of this as much as I want, because quite frankly, I have nothing better to do, so I just want to learn. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.